we are mildly interesting guys, and we talk about some stuff. So welcome to the podcast, we call it Joel the Podcast. It's Alex and it's Alex, here for Joel the Podcast. Hello everybody, I'm Alex.
And I'm Alex.
And this is our podcast,
Joel.
So, welcome to the week after our first ever world tour. If you have listened to that episode 22, you may have noticed that it cut off early, and that was due to a technical malfunction. And all we have to say is, too bad you didn't show up to our live show. You really missed out on an excellent movie. Honestly, if I remember correctly, the stuff that we discussed up until it stopped recording was kind of like okay, and it got a lot better after that.
It definitely did. Yeah, I think we didn't really put a lot of the stuff into place until the very end. It was all starting to kind of click as you know, it really turned up a notch at that point, and all of that's lost forever. So only our audience, which was nobody, got to hear that part.
Yeah. Honestly, I really expected almost nothing, and our fans still disappointed me. So.
I literally, somebody is paying us money on Patreon to do this, and they didn't even show up. So, at this point, I don't even know. So we were at Purdue for more than just the live show, of course, and we talked about the podcast with a few different people, or I did at least. I'm curious to hear if you had any experiences like this. Basically, I told it to people, and I tried really hard to lower their expectations, because you hear people. If I was told by some friends that they were like, oh yeah, we've been making this podcast for months now, discussing various topics and stuff, I'd be like, oh wow, that's super cool. I'm really interested in listening to that.
Right.
So of course that's the reaction we got, and I tried really hard to
be like, you don't understand. It's not good. You may like us as people, but you've never just listened to us talk for an hour.
That's the thing. I think if people were participating, I think that's the reason why we like it, because we get to participate.
Right.
If other people also got to participate, they would like it as well. But just listening to us,
yeah.
I don't know. That's.
Anyway, if you're actually listening to this and you like it, send us an email, alexandalex@joelthepodcast@gmail.com. Also, if you don't like it but you're somehow still listening, email us.
That's the other thing. I told, I'm sure there's been a handful of people that have listened to an episode, maybe not all the way through, but I feel like we dropped the email in so much that probably an actual person has actually listened to this and heard us say that. And on top of that, I told several people this weekend that this is a real email. That's not just a joke we do. And to genuinely email us.
Actually email us.
I don't care. It would be so funny to receive an actual email from a person, and yet nothing.
I remember one of the people I was talking. I think you were there when they were saying this. They were saying that they are definitely going to send us multiple emails. Do you remember that?
I do remember that. And in fact, I'm not certain which person you're talking about, because I feel like I heard that from multiple people.
Yeah. So. Anyway, I'm kind of disappointed. I was kind of disappointed when you said we haven't received an email yet.
Yeah.
Other than the other 16 million emails we received from Patreon.
Come on, Patreon. Do we really need to get all this nonsense from you? I feel like they kind of assumed that we had a genuine reason for setting up the Patreon, as if we were expecting some success.
When you say they, you're talking about Patreon?
About Patreon, yeah. I assume, well, I don't know. It's tough to say. it's in their best interests, I think, to assume that the people who are creating accounts will expect some amount of money,
Right.
and they're like sending us emails to try and help us widen our audience because clearly, we're not.
No audience.
We have no audience. Nobody's interested in paying us any money. We really only set it up as a joke.
Actually, we set it up because somebody asked us to.
We discussed setting it up as a joke, and then we never did it because it would be a joke that required effort. But then somebody asked us to. You're right.
So anyway,
Yeah.
please email us. Honestly, I just want one email.
Yes,
That's all
I do too. I really hope actually that we happen to get an email during one of these recordings because I would love to have that moment preserved.
Right.
In podcast history.
If you really don't like our podcast, just email us and tell us to stop. And honestly, if our first email is just someone telling us to stop, I might consider just stopping.
We would still have these discussions weekly, I'm sure, and like we just wouldn't have to do the work bits of it. So like, yeah, if you email us and tell us to stop, we probably just will.
Well, if you're the first person, if we get some other emails first, probably be less inclined to stop, but
right. I also feel like if we did stop, we'd have to shut down the Patreon as well. That way we're not getting paid $1 every month for no reason.
By the way, we never got that picture of our eyes that we wanted to put on our Patreon.
Oh, crap.
Which is unfortunate, but it does mean that shitty picture of the Purdue P will be on there forever.
It's very bad. And it is still, until further notice, that's just going to be what it is.
Until we get a cease and desist letter from Purdue.
In which case we'll have to Photoshop something else awful to be the...
It'll be our like cover photo, but like really thin.
That's actually exactly what I was just about to say too. That would be super, super bad. I can only assume that the poster I left in. I'm gonna say this on the podcast because I'm convinced that nobody actually listens to this.
Yeah.
The poster that I put in the cabinet in the well, has not been discovered because I haven't heard about it from anybody. I imagine that if somebody found it, they would actually, talk to us about it.
Right. Did the poster say to send us an email?
The poster didn't say that. It probably should have. It had a QR code that linked. It was like mail to Alex and Alex at joelthepodcast@gmail.com. So if you were to, it kind of implicitly tells you to email us.
Right. I think like 5 years ago or whenever, when I started making this joke of naming everything Joel,
yeah,
I really didn't think it would go this far, honestly.
It's pretty impressive how widespread it's become. It's not just your joke anymore. It's my joke, and it's also, I think indirectly Katie's joke, at least, because she has many things that are named Joel, whether or not she admits it.
Thanks to me.
Yeah. But I think some of the people who really should be listeners to this podcast, but definitely aren't, like David, are also in on the joke. So.
Yeah, I mean, this podcast is named Joel, so anyone who listens to the podcast probably is in on the joke. In on the joke meaning they've heard the joke, not meaning they understand the joke.
There's like 2 levels to the joke. There's the level that we are on, and there's everybody else.
So yeah, you heard us right, everybody. We're better than you.
Yep.
So, all right. So yeah. So why don't we get started now? Actually.
Started with the actual introduction bit.
Right, the actual intro is what I mean.
Where this is a new level of long introduction, but not even the introduction part of the introduction.
It's been 10 minutes and we haven't even started the
10
intro.
minutes?
9:42, 43, 44. So yeah, all right. So welcome everybody to episode 23.
Oh, right. Right.
Weekly
Okay.
reminder that Nathan does not owe me $1. And
Yep.
into
Despite spending an entire weekend together in person, there was
and you
no,
actually giving me $1 during the weekend.
for a brief period I did owe him $1, but we resolved it before any podcasting happened.
Yeah, I think we discussed that last week, right?
I think we did.
Yeah. So still doesn't owe me $1. Into the sports update, the Eagles won last weekend, which I believe I know we podcasted before the Eagles game.
Right.
So the Eagles have won one game since the last episode, and this week they're on a bye, so no game this weekend. The Sixers won a very exciting game in Portland last Saturday after the podcast, and then have since lost 3 in a row. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, 3 close games too in a West Coast road trip. So
I they lost to I think the Suns. Is that right?
That's right. They lost to the Suns, the Jazz, and someone else out west. I don't remember.
I didn't know about the other ones. I just had seen the Suns, and I think that was the first one because up until that game they were undefeated.
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
That's probably why I saw that, because I don't like browse r/NBA, but like it was the post from our NBA, so I probably just saw it scrolling through.
Right. They
because that was a big post.
They lost to Denver was the other team they lost to. Yeah, I was actually the Denver game was really heartbreaking because they were winning for like almost the entire game.
Yeah.
And Denver came back and won it.
Yeah.
But anyway,
that time we discussed Denver Nuggets on the podcast where all of us were there before the
yeah, and you guys were talking about what if someone on the Denver Nuggets doesn't like chicken nuggets.
Right.
Do you remember that? And I was trying to tell you that it's not chicken nuggets, it's gold nuggets.
That's totally fake. Has anybody, if you've heard of a gold nugget, please email us and tell me about it, because I don't believe you. They're definitely the Denver chicken nuggets, and nothing will convince me otherwise.
I'm about to email the podcast right now just to say that I know what gold nuggets are.
If you are a player on the Denver Nuggets,
please email us.
If you are in an official capacity associated with that franchise, please email me, because I consider you the only people that will be able to tell me that the Denver Nuggets are not secretly the Denver Chicken Nuggets.
Anyway, the Flyers, I haven't been following them at all, so I really can't tell you how they've been doing.
They're probably doing all right, I would imagine.
Yeah. On to Purdue.
Purdue sports have been going in okay. First of all, Purdue football has been doing well.
Well,
I mean,
I don't know if I would say that.
They won, which is all I really
They won against
hope for.
Northwestern, who's 1-8. So I just want to say that Northwestern scored 14 points in the first quarter of the game yesterday.
Yep.
And in the previous 3 games, they had scored a combined 6 points. So
yep.
I think it might be a slight stretch to say that Purdue played well, especially since they only won because of 2 pass interference penalties on the final drive. So
here's the thing. They may not have played well, but they played better than Northwestern did.
Yeah, so they played pretty poorly and still won, and I
don't care how poorly the football team plays if they win.
Right. I'm unironically expecting them to win the next 2 games and make a bowl and then get completely demolished.
Yeah. I also would love to see that happen. That would be amazing. They play Wisconsin at Wisconsin, so
So
it's
obviously a
likely
clear
to have-
win.
which really just makes it more likely that they'll come out of absolutely nowhere and destroy.
Us Boilermakers.
Yes, we haven't had a game like that all season. I think we've lost. Well, we've just lost so many games, and then we've only beaten bad teams so far.
Yeah.
So
So
anyway, there's still hope. It is still physically possible for Purdue to make a bowl.
yeah,
I don't think basketball season has started yet. Do you think basketball season started yet?
it has started. Purdue is 1-1.
Any basketball games that Purdue has played so far?
If you remember last year, they started out pretty poorly, and the season ended up going pretty well. So
Yeah,
it is unfortunate that they lost to Texas
at home.
yesterday at home, which broke their streak of 18 consecutive home wins.
Yeah.
But it's early in the season. They've got to figure things out without Carson Edwards.
Yeah, it's a bunch of I don't know that they're like all new guys, but they're certainly new together.
Right.
They're in a much different situation. I unironically think that Purdue is well coached and can get it together.
Yeah.
So
hopefully,
disappointed, but not. It's early.
A few months we'll be talking about. Honestly, I really just love thinking back to 2 years ago when Carson Edwards was like the third best player on the team.
Yeah.
Those were good times.
Those were good times. And I still have not forgiven Cal State Fullerton for injuring Isaac Haas and costing us a potential Final Four that year. Like we had a good shot.
Yeah, and honestly, what's surprising is that we had an even better shot last year.
Amazingly, yes.
Taking it to overtime with the national champion Virginia in the Elite Eight. Oh, yeah. I cannot believe that game. I had so many heart attacks watching that game.
It was inches away from beating them too, which is
yeah.
Anyway. Oh man.
Anyway, so Purdue basketball starting off 1-1. Not good, but not the end of the world. So we'll see how they progress through the rest of the season.
Yeah. I can't say I have super high hopes. I do expect a tournament appearance, of course. But as far as I can tell, Michigan and Michigan State are fairly good this year. I know Michigan's got a new coach, but I imagine the Big Ten will be a tough conference to
as usual.
Yeah, as usual.
Also, I know not Purdue or Philadelphia, but Minnesota.
Oh man, Minnesota!
What a game! Undefeated. I honestly feel bad for Minnesota because even though they're undefeated and they beat Penn State, I honestly don't think they're going to be in the top 10 in the rankings. Or actually, the ranks probably already came out. Are they in the top 10?
Let's check. I'm going to be upset if they're not. Honestly, like they deserve it.
The whole thing was the reason they weren't in the top 10 is because they hadn't played anyone good yet. Right. And now they've beaten Penn State, who was previously undefeated and ranked number 4. They better be in the top 10 at least, honestly.
All right, the AP poll is out, and Minnesota is number 7.
That's okay, I guess.
It is okay, and Penn State dropped to 9. However, in the AP poll previously, Minnesota had been at 13, so this isn't like a gigantic jump. In the CFP poll, they were 17, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
So they really are going to jump big if they make it all the way up into the top 10, regardless.
Yeah. So
I don't know.
Congratulations to Minnesota.
Honestly, I will freely admit that I also thought Minnesota was actually not that good and that they were going to get just thrashed at home by Penn State.
Right.
So I'm happy that I'm wrong though. I enjoy chaos in college
Also,
football.
speaking of, Alabama lost.
Yep. Everybody's enjoying that one except Alabama.
I believe that there was an earlier episode of the podcast, I think, where you were talking about how you really root for the underdogs at Alabama.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry that you had to go through this.
It turns out actually that Alabama was not the underdog in that game, despite being the lower ranked team, because they were at home.
Right.
So.
Anyway, congrats to LSU.
Yep, good job LSU. They're now in the AP poll. They're now number 1. I would expect them to be that way in the playoff poll as well.
So when LSU inexplicably loses to Georgia in the SEC championship game and Alabama makes it to the playoffs and wins, I'll be really depressed. But for now, I'm happy.
Yep. I've just looked down the list, and sitting at number 24 in the AP poll. You wanna throw out any guesses?
I have legit zero clue.
Indiana.
Fuck.
Right? They're 7-2. They're having an excellent season.
I really hate that.
It's super bad because we're like so injured, and I feel like we could have beaten them this year.
We still can. Like I said, we're gonna win out.
The top. I'm gonna read this all the way through at first before I read it out loud, because it's from an Indiana fan, and I wouldn't want to accidentally say anything crazy.
Right. So, anyway, I'll just.
Never mind. I've read it in full. I'm not gonna read it anymore.
Okay.
You can. I'll hold it up to the screen for you. I don't know if you'll be able to.
Rip.
That's a real bummer.
Yep. So, anyway, IU sucks. Go Purdue.
Yep.
And now that we're 23 minutes into the podcast, maybe we should actually do something.
Oh boy, this is going to be like a 3-hour podcast.
I feel like this may be one of the ones we want to split up into 2 episodes.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, just let's stick to a part 1 this week, and then wrap it up next week. And
anyways, all right. So we've decided that despite our lack of, despite the fact that we do not feel bad that no one heard last week's spectacular movie idea, we've decided that we should still do a movie this week to make up for the fact that no one heard it. So we went back to the same website as last time. You want to read the website out so we can remember it again for next time?
Yeah, just for the record, when I try and look this up again, it's thejohnfox.com, which I said last week, and that helped me find this again. But it's thejohnfox.com/2016/05/story-idea-generator. So thanks, I assume, John Fox, for making this website. It's been nice borrowing some content for you the past couple weeks.
So real quick before we get started, there was one Ask Reddit question that I wanted to get your input on here.
Yeah.
I'm not really the appropriate person to ask it, so I thought I'd ask you here. So here's the question: Sure. What is the appropriate amount of time to wait until you can show your significant other your Bionicle collection? As someone with a significant other, I thought you might be able to shed some light on this one.
Right. So we've been together since, depending how you count it, like March or April of 2016. So that's 2016,
2.5 years.
2018, 19, and like 8 months or so. So 3 years and 8 months is my lower bound to my answer, because I still have not showed Shelby my Bionicle collection.
Okay, well, I feel like you admitting you have one on the podcast here. Oh, she of course doesn't listen, right? So
She doesn't listen. Nobody listens.
okay, yeah, that's. So yeah, I guess you're safe for now still. Okay, so at least 3.5 years. So what
At
do you?
least 2.5 years. I can't definitely say that after 4 years or maybe 4.5 years that it'd be okay. But that's about the time where I feel like it might happen anyway.
Right.
I feel like once you live in the same place, it's really difficult to
hide.
Such a prominent collection.
Right.
That would actually be hilarious. I wonder how much Bionicles are. I feel like listen, when I was like,
I'm just imagining you spending like $500 to buy a Bionicles collection just so you can make like a single joke where you like say like, "Hey, Shelby, there's something I have to show you. I've been hiding this from you for 4 years now." And you just open up a room and it's like a sanctuary to like Bionicles. That'd be so funny.
That would be a hilarious prank.
April Fool's Day, you need to do that.
Oh man.
You'll be almost pretty much 4 years at that point.
So this will be actually, I won't be able to wait until April, but at some point. So here's my life plan for the next year. Settle in.
Oh, okay. I cannot wait.
This is,
Are you sure you're gonna do this on the podcast?
It's pretty brief and not descriptive. Basically, what's happening is I'm currently in a studio apartment, as you know. I would like to have a bigger apartment next year. So my lease ends in June, at which point I will find a hopefully 2-bedroom apartment at the same place I'm living now. But if that doesn't work out, any of the nearby places would be fine as well. So I'll have a bigger apartment with separate rooms, which is critical for the prank, obviously. And then at the beginning of the spring semester at IU of 2021, Shelby is going to have to do some clinical work, and she's going to attempt to do that at my current location, which is redacted, of course.
Honestly, I'd be a little surprised if we hadn't said it already on this podcast. Have we said it on the podcast already? I think okay. I know I accidentally let something slip before.
You're right. You did.
The state or the city.
I feel. I don't know. I'll have to go back and listen to.
Anyway, continue.
Whatever that was, but basically at that point, she will be here, and I don't think I'd be able to prevent her from seeing. Like, it'll be like January or so at that point. I don't think I'd be able to prevent her from going in a particular room at my apartment for 4 months to wait and do it on April Fool's Day.
Right. What if you just closed it and said it's storage? Would she look in there?
That's an interesting idea. Could I tell her that it's a closet and then somehow convince her to not look at it for 4 months?
So you don't need to convince her not to look at it. All you have to do is not get her to ever think about that room.
Right.
really want if she the critical point is right when she moves in.
Mm-hmm.
If she doesn't look at in the room then there's a decent chance you might be able to just hold off for 4 months.
Right. I wonder if she would be. I wonder if she would think it was funny if I hid that I had an extra room for 4 months.
Well, I'm sure she would know about the room.
Oh, you just think that she wouldn't look in it for any
Right.
reason for 4 months?
Like if you just had the door closed and said, "Oh, that's just storage."
Yeah.
Like I bet she would just never look in there for 4 months.
Well, what if she was,
At least there's a chance that she would never look in there.
or what if she was like, oh, I want to store something in here,
Oh,
and then like she like took her
you can't. It's full.
opened the door and saw just the walls lined with Bionicles.
Oh, so you're thinking that you have this set up by the time she gets there, and you just hide it for 4 months.
Otherwise, I'd have to like secretly set it up, like right before April Fool's Day or something, and I feel like that would be more stressful than trying to hide the room, is trying to hide that I am like setting up this room.
Right.
But actually, you know what? If I told her it was storage, but I actually did use it as storage up until like a week before when I, made the switch, I think that has a high probability of working. It just wouldn't be as funny.
Right, because she would have been like, "What? You just put this up."
Yeah.
Right.
It would really be a joke rather than. I think even if she was convinced for like a week or two and like didn't look in it right away, and then like one day just like when I wasn't around or something, like went to go check for something in there and like found it without me like
Can you imagine her reaction? Oh man.
That genuinely sounds like an excellent joke. So when I move, we'll have a moving podcast.
We'll have to assess what the situation is.
We'll assess what the situation is if we remember. We'll also go on eBay and look up Bionicles, because I imagine one of two things has happened in the 10 years since I owned a large amount of Bionicles, and that is either they've gone up in value because everybody's trying to collect them, or there's just millions of them selling for like $1 because.
Oh, they still make them.
They still make them? Like new ones, or just the same old ones again?
I don't actually know. I don't know anything about Bionicles.
Oh.
But I mean, I can see new ones being sold on Amazon.
Well, let me take a look. As a Bionicle expert, I'll be able to tell you whether these are. So Amazon. I'm going to search for Bionicles on Amazon, which is going to give me just the weirdest suggestions on Amazon for like the next 6 months.
Nice. I think it's great that you actually had a Bionicles collection.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I can confirm that these are they look like some of the same characters, but they are like new sets, like new new versions of them.
All right, so
I'm curious what actually. So I don't know if you know any. Do you know anything about Bionicles?
I pretty much know nothing.
Okay, so back in the day, there was a so they had like the like the Lego sets of them, and I think those were around first. But then they also had some people that wrote books about the Lego characters. So like they had all this backstory and stuff, and there was a whole like world constructed, and eventually I think so. I didn't like analyze this as a kid. I'm just totally speculating now based on what I remember, which is not a whole lot, but
right.
So I think the way it worked was they had the Lego sets, then they wrote books about the Lego sets, and the books became popular, and like when the books introduced things, they would make Lego sets of those things.
Right.
That could be totally wrong. And if you know more about Bionicles than I do, please email us at alexandalex@joelthepodcast@gmail.com. Because I would be super interested in discussing Bionicles with an equally or more qualified person rather. I feel like that would be a decent use of my time.
Okay, so it turns out they don't still make them.
They don't still make them. Amazon just sells old ones.
I guess they made them as recently as 2016.
Okay.
So here's what Wikipedia says, this is excellent, by the way. I'm so happy this podcast has devolved into about Bionicles. Bionicles was a line of Lego construction toys marketed primarily towards 8 to 16-year-olds. Originally a subsidiary of Lego's Technic series, the line launched in Europe and Australia in 2000 and the Americas in 2001. Over the following decade, it became one of Lego's biggest selling properties, turning into a franchise and playing a part in saving the company from its financial crisis in the late 1990s. Despite a planned 20-year tenure, the theme was discontinued in 2010, but was rebooted in 2015 for a further 2 years. Unlike previous LEGO themes, Bionicle was accompanied by a original story told across a multimedia spectrum depicting the exploits of the Toa, a heroic biomechanical beings with innate elemental abilities whose duty was to maintain peace throughout the universe. Bionicle's success prompted subsequent LEGO themes to utilize similar storytelling methods.
Yeah.
So, there you go. Bionicles saved LEGO.
That I did not know that. That's pretty great. Also, I am on eBay right now looking at old sets, and they're not like that expensive. I mean, collecting a lot, they're all like on the order of $10 per set. So like collecting a large enough quantity of them to really sell the joke would be a pretty significant amount of money.
My $500 figure wasn't that far off.
Yeah. Yeah, that would get me 50 or so, which would be a good
amount.
A good amount.
Shelby, if you're listening to this podcast, please email us so we don't end up doing this prank.
Talk us out of it, please. Tell us how it would have been, but about it now, so there's no point.
Right, send us a picture of what your face would have looked like upon finding out if you hadn't known.
Just send us a picture of your current face, because I assume it's similar to what it would have looked like after listening to all of this.
This is what her face looks like. It's just kind of like weirded out.
Yep. And I was gonna follow up the $10 a piece figure by saying I could buy them for that amount and then just sell them after the joke for a similar amount, probably not lose all of that money.
That's probably true.
But then again, maybe I just want to have all those Bionicles again.
Sure. Whatever you want.
It's impossible to say, I think.
Anyway, so all right, so I guess we've got we've got your April Fool's joke planned out for next year.
Well, for next year, April Fool's 2021.
Oh, right, 2021, right? I forgot.
Yeah, we're really planning this ahead and just publishing it publicly.
In 6 months, 2021, we're gonna have the whole year planned out.
Yep.
All right, so
how's your 2021 look? Any upcoming big plans or?
Yeah, I'm going to see Hamilton with you.
In New York City without Shelby?
No, with Shelby. That's why we're waiting till 2021, remember?
Okay. Yep.
So,
okay.
Shelby, if you're listening to this, you're coming to Hamilton with us in 2021.
She's probably fine with that.
Yeah.
So that's two plans.
Yep.
That's just about the number of plans I ever have for a year, so
All right.
pretty good job.
This went a little longer than I think we anticipated.
What
So
where are we at now?
we're approaching 40 minutes here.
Oh man, we really derailed our.
Honestly, it's for a good cause. So
what what I want to know is how Bionicles came up, because I don't remember that, and that's really what did it.
it's because I asked you an Ask Reddit question, which was, how
Oh.
long is an appropriate time to wait before you tell your significant other about your Bionicles collection?
Right. So in April 2021, that'll be a clean 5 years. So
Yeah.
wait 5 years. You'll probably be okay at that stage.
Yeah. All right. So what I'm thinking is we're coming into this podcast kind of in the middle of fleshing out our premise for our movie.
Right.
So what I'm thinking is we finish that, and then next week we do the actual movie.
Sounds good.
All right. So
So I'll go ahead and present this week's idea prompt. Thanks again to thejohnfox.com/2016/05/story dash idea dash generator. So thanks. The prompt is, oh no.
that's
Uh-oh.
not. Did you lose it?
I opened up the webpage. I didn't do anything to it, but when I opened it up, it was back on the first one I read to you about the divorce.
Oh, so you should just be able to generate until you get to.
It may not work like that because the next ones are not the same next
Okay,
week.
so it won't work. All right, so we know what it is though, so we can just say it.
Yeah, I'm really this is a bummer.
We
I found the bowling prompt again though.
not that much of a bummer. We still know what it is.
Yeah, I know. I feel like we're gonna really not do it justice though. The wording was just
Immaculate.
immaculate. Literally, thanks thejohnfox.com/2016/05.
Okay. All right.
What I'm trying to do is like make it so that no matter where I randomly click to in the episode, I'm not that far from helping
Just
myself out.
bookmark the page.
That's a decent idea.
Right. So the premise was that a guy is hiking in the mountains and he comes across a spherical metallic object the size of a small car. And there's an old man there who says he's the guardian of the object. So what is the object, and what happens?
Right.
So after some discussion, we've decided that the object is a time machine. And the story is that basically it's like a loop. So the old man, this is the big twist at the end, is that the old man and the guy are the same. The old man is the guy from the future.
Right.
So the idea is that the old man is forced to guard the time machine for some reason, which we haven't exactly decided why yet. And what happens is the young version of him comes up and is interested in the thing, and the old man tries to convince him to like just move on and go away.
Yeah.
And the guy, isn't convinced, and he sticks around, and eventually the old man either dies or, I guess dies. I don't really know what else he would do. And the guy is forced to become the guardian of the time machine again.
Right.
And he spends many years trying to figure out how to get it to work. And when he's old, he finally does and goes back in time and tries to once again convince his younger self not to stick around. And what you see is that he keeps like a log of all the different ways he's tried to get his younger self to go away. So that's
each iteration of this loop, like a different version of the old man tries a different thing. So like over and over, they've accumulated this list, and I think that's part of the punch too, is like when the guy finally is like super old and he's got it figured out, he like sees the list and it's like 60 long or something. And he's like, well, what's the point? Why is this one gonna work?
Right. So I was thinking, we kind of decided that the movie would just be this, but what if it's actually like the first half of the movie or so is this, and the second half of the movie is just like you see repeatedly this guy, all the different ways he tries to get the young guy to go away until it finally works in the end.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Like the first loop, you kind of see the whole story flesh out, and you don't really understand it yet until like halfway through it all, like the big reveal.
Right.
And then the second, like half of the half or something is just a bunch of attempts, and then the last quarter of the movie or whatever is like the one successful, finally breaking out of the loop, and it's a happy ending or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
This actually reminds me of a Doctor Who episode.
Yeah?
Yeah, what happens is basically he gets teleported into this area.
Okay.
And he goes through all this stuff and figures out. He notices all these things that indicate that a lot of time has passed since he teleported it. So he remembers saying, "I'm going to teleport to this place."
Yeah.
And then he remembers being teleported there, but he notices a lot of things that indicate that a lot of time has passed since then.
Right.
And he figures out that he's actually basically stuck in a loop, and he has to get through this basically extremely thick wall made of diamond or something really hard.
Oh.
And every single time he just basically punches it a few times, and you don't really understand what's going on, except he keeps. And what happens is at the end he dies and resets the computer to reassemble his particles again in the teleporter.
Yeah.
Which is what causes him to come back every time. And basically, over millions and millions of years, he slowly erodes this diamond wall or whatever until he escapes.
Oh.
Anyway, I thought that's what it reminded me of. All right, so we need some reason for. What is the reason how the guy's forced to be the Guardian?
I think it should be some sort of like the word that comes to mind is supernatural, but I don't think there should be like an actual supernatural person or anything doing the forcing. I think it should just be like basically the time machine doesn't prevent the old man from walking too far away from it. Like he's literally physically confined to a small area around it.
You mean it does prevent him from walking too far away from it?
Oh yeah, what did I say?
I said it doesn't prevent him.
Oh. It doesn't not prevent him from.
It doesn't allow him.
It doesn't allow him to go too far from it. He's physically confined to the area around it. And basically, maybe that's a result of him like using it.
See, that doesn't
that doesn't work because he doesn't.
Right.
The young guy doesn't use it until the end to try and.
Right. So what it has to be is, right. So that's a good idea. Like anytime he tries to walk away, he just gets, transported back to right next to it.
So maybe once you touch it, you can't.
I feel like it's not touch it.
It can't be that. Maybe
It's got to be like a verbal.
What it is or something like that. Once you like realize.
Maybe it's like if the if the previous guardian dies, then whoever else is nearby becomes the guardian.
Here's the problem that I'm trying to solve. Basically, there's I think 2 stages in the initial meeting, where it's like the old guy trying to convince the young guy. So this is stage 1. The old guy tries to convince the young guy not to do whatever it is that causes you to get stuck, and that needs to happen for a while, I think. But then there's a second stage where the young guy is stuck, but the old guy is still around, or maybe the old guy is dead at that point, and that's what caused it. But like, I feel like there needs to be a period at the beginning there where the young guy wants to do the thing that you shouldn't do, and the old guy needs to prevent him from doing that thing. But it needs to be the sort of thing that like can cause kind of a drawn out conflict, you know?
Right. I was kind of thinking that instead of it being like the old guy is just trying to prevent the young guy from doing something, he's actually that makes more sense. I was just kind of thinking it would be the old guy trying to get the young guy to just leave. But what you're saying makes more sense. The young guy wants to do something, and the old guy wants to prevent him from it. Yeah, so
Maybe the old guy like accidentally reveals that it's a time machine like right away.
maybe he's forced to reveal that it's a time machine.
How would he? What would force him? Does it like?
The thing is, if he accidentally reveals it, then that kind of destroys the whole plot of every single time.
The loop.
Right. It would be easy to get the guy to go away just by never telling him anything.
Yeah.
You just
the
said,
old guy's like, oh, what's that? And the old guy's like, oh, it's a time machine. Shit.
Right.
Did it again.
So it would make sense if he were forced to say that it was a time machine.
Right.
I'm not sure how you would convey that, though.
So there's another thing that kind of goes along with that, which is I feel like one of the most effective ways for the old guy to get the young guy to listen to him is for the old guy to be like, I'm you from the future, you know? But like be able to back that up, which I assume there's some way that he could.
Maybe it's like the old guy is bound by a very specific things he can say. Like maybe he can only answer yes or no questions.
Okay.
Like when the guy shows up, he says like, I am the keeper of the orb.
Yeah.
And I am the keeper of this time machine, and I can answer your questions, but only yes or no questions, or something. It's just that seems a little contrived, I guess.
Yeah. Maybe that's
Like otherwise there would be no reason for the old guy to just not say, I'm you from the future, you keep getting stuck becoming the guardian of this time machine, you need to leave right now.
Yeah.
I mean, you can always pull the old, you can't interfere with the past, or whatever. Otherwise, you'll destroy the universe. But that's kind of lame, too.
Yeah, I don't like that. I wanna try and come up with a decent way for time travel to work that doesn't, doesn't run into those problems. But why? So I think the question we need to answer is why can't the old guy just be like, I'm you from the future. You'll get stuck here if you stay here. Go away.
I really think it would be a good mechanic for the old guy to only be able to say certain things. It's just, what's a good way to do that without making it seem kind of contrived and not stupid?
Right. It's gotta kind of make sense. Like maybe This is a bit of a stretch, but maybe he can't like do anything that would directly influence his past self to make a choice. Like maybe
I feel like that kind of defeats the whole premise. Like that's all he wants to do is the whole plot is him trying to convince his past self to do something.
yeah, but like if he can't like directly say anything, well,
The thing is,
I
how far
guess
how
you're
far
right. If I say it like that, right?
like how far do you take it? Like the guy shows up and you're like, oh hey, and he's like, who are you? And he's like, oh, I'm just some guy. And he's like, oh, what's this? Oh, it's a time machine. And the guy's like, oh, can I go in it? And he's like, no. He's like, why not? You just can't. Wasn't that him already influencing him?
Yeah. Okay. Let's think about the yes and no thing for a minute. Is there any like what's the basis? Can we think of a reason why that would be the case? Like is that just part of being trapped there and being the guardian? Is you're like compelled to
See, the whole like not being able to walk away thing makes sense. It's just how would you force someone to only say yes or no? Like only answer yes or no questions.
maybe the old guy can't speak at all?
That's an interesting idea.
Be kind of a challenge in a movie to have one of the really important characters not be able to speak.
I'm sure that's doable.
Yeah. It would make for a good like if we ever see you know what we should at one point we should see like kind of the backstory, like some of the first iterations.
Right.
And, like the very first one is like literally all the old guy tries to do is just like shout at his younger self, but like can't, doesn't make any noise, and the younger self just like does whatever he's not supposed to do immediately.
Right.
And like you'll skip forward 1,000 tries and or like I don't know 10
Nope.
tries. I don't know how long this should have been going
What
on.
would be cool is if there were flashbacks in the beginning of the in the beginning part of the movie, but you didn't understand what was being flashed back to.
Yeah.
Like what you're really seeing is the first time. Okay, what we really actually need is what originally happens that causes this guy to become the keeper of the time machine. Because if we have that, then you can flash back to the events leading up to that happening
Uh-huh.
without totally understanding what's going on. And then basically the flashback to where you see him becoming the keeper for the first time coincides with the part of the current timeline where you understand what's going on, where they're the same guy. Do you see what I'm saying? Like the whole beginning part, you're flashing back to the old guy, to the old guy's perspective, and it's the events of whatever led up to him becoming the keeper of the thing in the first place, but you don't know that at the time.
When the old guy was the young guy?
What?
When the old guy was the young guy?
Right. See that? Yes, but that's
Well, like the young guy
the
it just looks the same, right?
right. What I'm thinking is maybe.
So are you saying like literally his first person view? Or
Well, I was thinking that he would just look different somehow, but that doesn't make any sense.
no? It's not even actually progressing through time, so you can't say like he was wearing outdated clothes or something.
You could just see the back of his head.
Yeah, that could work. And then part of the reveal could be like you're looking at the back of his head when he's about to do whatever, and then like it pans around and shows his face is the young guy or something.
Right. Or
That-
he could change his appearance somehow right before he like goes to the mountain, goes hiking. Like he has a bunch of facial hair or something before, and then he shaves it to go hiking. Or, he's like a fat guy, and then some tragedy happens which causes him to lose a bunch of weight, and
Yeah.
so he looks pretty different. Yeah, I don't know.
That's kind of tricky. I think we're gonna with the different timelines thing. This is gonna be a difficult.
Right. Anyway, that's kind of getting into the weeds of what I want to talk about next week. What we really need today, before we finish this podcast, which should be soon, is we need something that happened. What's the original cause of him becoming this,
Yeah.
and what exactly is preventing him from just telling the guy that he's him from the future.
Yeah. So to answer the second one, I say the old guy not being able to speak is the most reasonable sounding thing that I've come up with so far.
So what prevents him from being able to speak?
He just the time machine doesn't allow it. I don't know. Maybe the time machine like wants the guy to be clearly the time machine wants to have some sort of guardian because it's forcing the guy to stay there. So like maybe it's like also actively working against him trying to save his past self.
I feel like the time machine itself isn't a character. The time machine is just a machine that follows a set of rules. So it's not like the time machine is actively combating his efforts. It's just
Okay.
the rules of the time machine are restrictive enough to that he can't easily stop his past self from doing it.
All right.
I guess
Here's an idea that's a bit weird, but sort of makes sense if you don't think about it too much, which I feel like is how lots of movie ideas work. So
right.
Here we go. The old guy, when he travels back in time, can't like physically interact with his surroundings, so he wouldn't be able to just like restrain the young guy. But that also means he can't like sound waves from him don't interact with anything in the present, I guess.
So he's a ghost basically.
Sort of, yeah.
That's an interesting idea. Because I feel like any reason we come up with for him not being able to speak is just going to make no sense. Other than like any reason we come up with that's something to do with like the time machine won't allow it. Like
Yeah.
presumably whoever put this protocol into the time machine wanted someone to be always there guarding it, which I guess makes sense.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make sense that they wouldn't allow the person to talk. That just makes no sense. So what if you go back in time you can't speak? Or
Because you're a ghost, sort of.
you're a ghost. You can't.
And if you go too far away from the time machine, like it's the thing that's kind of like anchoring you there, you know? So like once you've gone, so it's not like he physically can't wander away from it, but he'll just like disappear or something.
Okay, so this kind of works with the fact that he's no longer the guardian once he goes back in time, because he's a ghost. You can't really be the guardian as a ghost. So
Right.
The time machine's looking for a new guardian, so he has to prevent his past self from becoming the new guardian.
Yeah.
But the question is, no.
Okay, here's my question though. Had he not gone back in time, he would just still be the guardian, and his past self
would also still be the Guardian.
So he's hoping that by going back in time, his
He can
past self won't be the Guardian.
Yes.
And that means, like, following that forward in time, that he himself will also no longer be the Guardian?
I feel like obviously we have to deal with some kind of paradox explanation here.
Yeah.
I feel like if you go back in time, but what I'm imagining is he goes back the final time he goes back and he convinces the guy to not do it,
Yeah.
and then he just sort of fades out of existence is what I'm thinking. Like back to the Future style.
Okay.
It just kind of fades into oblivion and it never happened.
Huh.
So like which obviously is still a paradox, but we can just kind of ignore that.
Sure.
So in the end he would just kind of fade out of existence and the younger version of himself would go on living his normal life.
Right. Okay. I mean, that's reasonable enough, right? Like, it doesn't fully make sense, I guess, but like it's a decent.
It's a decent premise.
Yeah, it's an okay like framework for us to work with.
So I guess he's a ghost.
Sort of.
What do you mean sort of? In what way is he not a ghost?
He's not like dead or anything. He's just, you know,
There's no practical
ghosts are dead.
There's no practical difference between him and a dead ghost.
You mean a living ghost?
No, he's a living ghost.
All ghosts are dead,
Except for him, he's not dead.
so he's not a ghost.
Right,
So
but
he's
I'm
a
saying
ghost
there's no practical difference between him and a ghost.
and a living ghost.
Or even a dead ghost. Like, even if you just say, oh, he's alive, there's no actual practical effect of that.
Well, but he is alive.
Well, okay, so will he eventually just die, even as a ghost-like living person?
Yeah, I think he's only sort of like a ghost because he time traveled to a different time.
So in that case, what will cause him to die?
Like regular aging.
Okay, so
he can't interact with the past, but like he's not literally a ghost now.
he has to be immune to, like, hunger, though, because he can't eat anymore.
Maybe he brought food from the future with him after the first time he tried to do this, he like starved to death because he couldn't eat like present food. Or maybe here's an idea. Maybe he can interact with anything except his past self when he's in the past. So he can't like talk to his past self, he can't like grab his past self. If there would have been another person there, they could have like relayed the information. It would have been easier, but
Why can't he just write in the dirt then? I'm your future self, go away.
I feel like you're attacking too central of a premise at this point.
You mean I'm attacking too central of a premise?
Well, to answer that, oh wait, no, you're right.
Before,
So-
we could just say he was a ghost, so he couldn't write in the dirt, but now he's not a ghost.
So he's a ghost sort of because he can't talk to his past self or like write in the dirt or anything or like interact with the past in any way. But the time machine has like effectively a vending machine or something inside it. So like he can always like it would make sense that it would want to take care of him so that he could continue to guard it.
Right.
So like it will always provide the most basic nutrition. It's like really terrible, but it's good enough. So because that sort of makes sense, and why not?
Do you think he can float?
No.
If not, what prevents him from falling through the ground?
Uh,
You know what? We can ignore that. That's fine.
I think we should ignore that because yep, that would be difficult to.
Yeah. He can't leave any footprints, obviously. But he just doesn't fall through the ground.
Or float, because neither of those things would make sense.
Yeah. All right. So, with that being said, what originally causes him to be in this situation?
Right. So I feel like the first time the series of events really should be he's doing the same hiking and he goes up to where the time machine is, but there's no old version of himself because he hasn't done that yet.
So there's no Guardian. The time
There's-
machine just
there's no
appeared recently enough that no one has become the Guardian.
Right.
Interesting. You know what's interesting is this premise opens up like a whole lot of other questions, like where did the time machine come from?
Right.
And, which would be cool to answer. I just don't think we could do all of that in a single movie.
Right. I don't think we need much more beyond that.
I agree. I think that's probably
It's
fine.
interesting to do a lot more beyond that, but like not in this particular movie.
Right.
This is just the beginning of the Joel cinematic universe.
The Joel. Oh, we discussed that. Remember, we said every single one of our movies will take place in the same universe.
Right. I feel like that might have been like somewhere in the second half of last week's podcast, though. So
I think you're right.
this might be the first official time that we're revealing to our listeners that that's
The Joel
true.
cinematic universe.
Yeah. So look for some references and Easter eggs and things
The
right
problem.
out between our movies. We've already integrated the original ones together. Of course, you probably noticed all of the carefully laid references we made in our previous movies.
Right. So
And this one will be no different.
it's a shame that they missed all the ones we made in the last one.
Yeah, they were so good, and being perfectly honest here, there's no humble way to say this. I can't believe the staggering quantity of amazing bowling puns we came up with.
I thought you were being facetious for a second, but that's actually 100% accurate.
All right,
including the title,
Yep.
Sherlock Bones, which will make no sense unless you were there. So
Which
suck it for
really
not being there.
us. All right. So does that answer all of the questions we've got so far? Is that?
Yeah, I think we should be able to start on this next week.
I think so too. We've got enough of a start, I think, to kind of start diving deeper. So of course, as always, if you noticed any inconsistencies in our movie plot, please email us at alexandalex@joelthepodcast@gmail.com. We won't be correcting any of them. We just need to know what people found so that we can retroactively edit the podcast to make ourselves right in the first place.
We don't even need to know what people found. We just want an email.
That's the real reason. Please email us.
Yes, please email us. All right. So I guess with that, we are probably well past when people have stopped listening to us. So, I'm Alex,
I'm Alex.
and this has been Joel.